When she first moved in next door, I simply thought she was a very warm-hearted person.
I'd love to learn how to tend a garden. Would you like to come inside for a moment?
One day, she asked for my help, saying she was soaking wet from a broken sprinkler. I was captivated by the sight of her and began to develop feelings for her. Then, on that fateful day, she approached me as I was tending my garden, just like any other day, and said this.
You have such kind eyes, but I get the feeling there's a wild side to you.
I couldn't resist her temptation. I thought love had come knocking. But I should have realized it then. The fact that she was a gold digger. My name is George, and for 66 years, I thought I knew who I was. I was a husband, a father, a bank manager who people in our town respected. Now, I'm just a ghost. A ghost haunting the halls of a life I built but no longer feel a part of. They say retirement is the golden age, a time for rest and reward. For me, it has been a special kind of hell, a silent, empty room where the only sound is the ticking of a clock counting down to nothing. This story is a warning. It's about how a man, starved for a single drop of recognition, will drink poison thinking it's water. If sharing my foolishness can prevent even one of you from making the same mistake, then it's a story I have to tell. Please, do me a favor and click that like and subscribe button below. It costs you nothing, but it helps ensure this story reaches someone who might be standing on the same cliff edge I was, about to take that fatal first step. The day my world began to unravel started like any other Tuesday. The sun streamed through the blinds, slicing the darkness in our bedroom into neat, dusty stripes. I had been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling, my mind a blank slate. The habit of waking at 6 a.m., ingrained from 40 years of catching the early train, refused to die. The purpose, however, was long gone. Beside me, my wife, Martha, groaned and slapped the snooze button on her alarm. Her alarm, not ours. I didn't need one anymore.
Are you going to just lie there all day?
Her voice was thick with sleep and a familiar, weary irritation. I rolled over, the mattress springs groaning in protest.
Just thinking.
Thinking doesn't pay the bills, George. I have to get ready for work.
She swung her legs out of bed, her movements stiff. Martha had picked up extra shifts at the supermart pharmacy to make up for my lost income. She was 64. And the long hours on her feet were carving new lines of exhaustion onto her face. I felt a familiar pang of guilt, a dull, useless ache in my chest. I wanted to say something, to offer some comfort, but the words felt like ash in my mouth. What could I say? Don't worry, honey, I'll go back to being the man you married? It felt like a lie. Down in the kitchen, the silence was a physical presence. I made coffee, the machine gurgling and hissing, the only conversation I'd have for the next several hours. Martha came down, already in her blue supermart vest, pinning on her, Martha, pharmacy tech, name badge. She grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and poured the coffee I'd made into a travel mug.
There's leftover casserole in the fridge for lunch. Don't forget to take your blood pressure medication.
I won't.
She paused at the door, her hand on the knob, her back to me. For a moment, I thought she might turn, might say something else. Something from the old days. But she just sighed.
Try to do something today. Maybe mow the lawn. The neighbors are starting to talk.
The click of the door closing was the starting pistol for my day of nothing. The house settled into its usual tomb-like quiet. I ate a piece of toast, staring out the kitchen window at our perfectly manicured suburban street. Oak Creek, We'd bought this house 30 years ago. A symbol of our success. Now it felt like a cage. A very clean, very beige cage. Martha was right. The lawn did need mowing. It was a task, something to fill the gaping void of the next 8 hours. As I wrestled the lawnmower out of the garage, a sleek, black convertible I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway of the house next door. The one the Millers had sold a few months back. The driver's side door opened, and a woman emerged. She was stunning, not in a Hollywood way, but in a real, tangible way that made the air in my lungs feel thin. She was probably in her late 40s, with fiery red hair tied up in a messy but elegant bun. She wore yoga pants that clung to her like a second skin and a simple white t-shirt. She moved with a confidence, an energy that I hadn't seen or felt in years. She spotted me fumbling with the lawnmower's pull cord and smiled. It was a dazzling, full wattage smile that made me feel like I'd been standing in the dark my whole life.
Having a little trouble there?
Her voice was like warm honey, smooth and sweet. I felt my face flush, suddenly aware of my stained t-shirt and the paunch pushing against my belt.
It's got a mind of its own sometimes.
I know the feeling. I'm Brenda. I just moved in.
She walked across her lawn and extended a perfectly manicured hand. I wiped my own greasy hand on my pants before shaking it. Her grip was firm.
George Hammond, welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you, George. It's a beautiful street. You have a lovely home. Did you do all this landscaping yourself? The stonework around those hydrangeas is just gorgeous.
I was taken aback. No one had complimented the stonework in 20 years. I'd done it myself one summer, painstakingly laying each stone. Martha had complained about the cost and the dirt I'd tracked into the house.
I did, a long time ago.
Well, you have a real talent. An eye for value.
She winked, and it felt like a small, pleasant electric shock. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't an old, retired man. I was a man with talent. A man with an eye for value. We chatted for a few more minutes. She mentioned she was a consultant, working from home, recently divorced. She made it sound like an adventure, a fresh start. Every word she spoke seemed designed to make me feel seen, to make me feel interesting. When she finally went inside, I started the lawnmower on the first pull. The engine roared to life, and for a foolish moment, so did I a week later, the memory of that conversation was still a warm ember in my chest. I'd only seen Brenda in passing since then. A wave from her car, another bright smile as she carried in groceries. Each brief encounter was a jolt to my system. Then came the day of the bait. It was a sweltering afternoon. I was out front, trimming the hedges, another pointless task to kill time. I saw Brenda in her front yard, adjusting the sprinklers. She was wearing a crisp, white dress shirt tied at her waist and a pair of shorts that showed off her long, toned legs. I tried not to stare, focusing on the rhythmic snip-snip of the shears. Suddenly, one of the sprinkler heads sputtered, shot sideways, and drenched her completely.
Oh, good heavens.
She yelped, a theatrical little scream. The thin, white fabric of her shirt was now completely transparent, clinging to every curve of her body. She stood there, helplessly, looking directly at me. My shears fell silent. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird.
Oh, George, I am so sorry. You have to see this. I'm completely soaked. I can't get this stupid thing to turn off.
She was laughing, but her eyes were locked on mine. It was a performance, and I was the sole audience member. I dropped the shears and walked over, my mind a fog of confusion and a primal, long-dormant desire. The water was still spraying erratically.
Here, let me see.
I knelt, pretending to examine the sprinkler head, my hands fumbling with the nozzle. I was acutely aware of her standing over me, water dripping from her hair onto my back, the scent of her perfume mixing with the smell of wet earth and cut grass.
You're a lifesaver, George. A real knight in shining armor.
I finally managed to twist the valve at the base, and the water shut off. When I stood up, we were only inches apart. I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. I could see the rapid pulse in her throat.
Thank you, but now look at me. I'm a mess, and I have a client call in 30 minutes.
She gestured down at her soaked, transparent shirt, a picture of feigned embarrassment.
You know, the least I can do is offer my hero a cold drink. To thank you for saving me from a rogue sprinkler.
Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper.
My air conditioning is on full blast. Please say yes, just for a few minutes.
My mind screamed 1,000 warnings. Martha, your wife. This is wrong. She's your neighbor. But my body was no longer listening to my brain. It was listening to the honey in her voice, to the promise in her eyes. It was responding to the intoxicating feeling of being wanted, of being a hero, even for a moment. All I could do was nod, my throat too dry to speak.
Wonderful.
She smiled that dazzling smile again, turned, and led me toward her front door, fully aware that I was following her, my eyes fixed on the outline of her body through the wet cloth. She was the predator, and I was the prey, walking willingly, stupidly, into the heart of her trap. I knew I should have turned around, walked back to my empty house and my quiet life. But I didn't, and like a fool, I stepped inside. The air inside Brenda's house was cool and still, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat outside. It smelled of something clean and vaguely floral, like a hotel lobby. The furniture was all sharp angles and muted colors, gray, white, chrome. There were no family photos on the walls, no clutter on the coffee table, no sign that a life was actually being lived here. It was a showroom, a stage set for a play, and I had just walked onto it.
Make yourself at home, George. Can I get you that drink? Iced tea? Or perhaps something a little stronger? I have a rather nice single malt scotch.
I should have said iced tea. The sensible, neighborly thing. But the word that came out of my mouth was different.
Scotch sounds good.
Excellent choice. A man of taste.
She smiled and disappeared into the kitchen. I stood awkwardly in the center of the living room, feeling large and out of place. My worn sneakers looked obscene on her pristine white area rug. While she was gone, I heard the faint sound of a door closing upstairs. A moment later, she returned, holding 2 heavy crystal glasses filled with amber liquid. She had changed. The soaked shirt and shorts were gone, replaced by a dark green silk robe that shimmered as she moved. It was tied loosely at the waist, hinting at the curves beneath without revealing them. She handed me a glass, her fingers brushing against mine. The brief contact sent another jolt through my system. She gestured to the sprawling gray sofa.
Please, sit, don't be shy.
I sat on the edge of the cushion, taking a sip of the scotch. It was smooth and smoky, burning a pleasant trail down my throat. She sat at the other end of the sofa, curling her legs up underneath her. For a moment, we just sat in silence, the only sound the clinking of ice in our glasses.
So, George the hero. What does a man like you do when he's not saving damsels from their sprinklers?
The question was playful, but her eyes were serious, studying me.
Not much, these days. I'm retired. I used to manage the main branch of the First National Bank downtown.
I said it with a hint of my old pride, a reflex from a past life.
A bank manager. I knew it. You have that look. Capable. In control.
She took a slow sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving my face.
It must be a difficult adjustment. To go from running everything to, well, to this. Mowing lawns. A man with your kind of mind needs a challenge, doesn't he?
It was as if she had reached into my chest and pulled out the one secret, shameful thought I'd been hiding for a year. I felt a lifetime of composure begin to crack.
My wife, Martha, she doesn't get it. She thinks I should be happy just pottering around the garden.
She's a practical woman, I can tell. She thinks about the bills, the chores. That's important. But some men, the special ones, they need more than just practicality. They need to feel alive. They need a partner who understands their ambition, who sees the fire that's still burning inside.
Her words were wrapping around me, a warm, comforting blanket of validation. She wasn't attacking Martha, not directly. She was simply positioning herself as the one person on earth who truly understood the real George Hammond. I found myself leaning forward, the scotch glass forgotten in my hand, telling this near stranger everything. I told her about the suffocating silence in my house, about feeling invisible, about the shame of watching my wife go to work while I did nothing. I was handing her the keys to my entire, pathetic kingdom. She listened intently, nodding in all the right places, her expression a perfect mask of sympathy. When I finally ran out of words, she slid across the sofa cushion, closing the distance between us. She placed her cool hand on my arm.
You're not invisible, George. I see you.
Her voice was barely a whisper. She smelled of that clean, floral scent and expensive scotch. She leaned in, her gaze dropping from my eyes to my lips. And then, she kissed me. It wasn't a tentative, questioning kiss. It was a kiss of ownership, of certainty. All the loneliness, the shame, the years of feeling undesired, it all dissolved in that single moment. My mind went blank. There was no Martha, no neighborhood, no right or wrong. There was only Brenda, and the feeling of being resurrected from the dead. That afternoon was a fever dream. We moved from the living room to her bedroom upstairs, a room as sterile and impersonal as the one below. But in that moment, it felt like a sanctuary. I felt like I was 25 again, strong and virile. She made me feel like the man I used to be, the man I had long since given up on. Later, as we lay tangled in the cool, gray sheets, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room, she began to poison me with her plan.
You know, George.
She began, tracing a pattern on my chest with her finger.
The reason I moved here, to this quiet little town, was for an investment. Something exclusive.
She spoke of a private real estate fund buying up distressed commercial properties in Arizona. She used words like off-market, guaranteed high yield, and ground floor opportunity. It was all vague enough to be impressive and specific enough to sound real.
It's a sure thing. I've already doubled my money on a similar deal last year. The only problem is, there's one last slot open, and I'm just a little short on the capital required to get the best tier. It's a shame to let it go.
She sighed dramatically, rolling onto her back to stare at the ceiling.
Imagine us, George. Imagine what we could do with that kind of freedom. No more worrying about Martha's shifts at the supermart. We could travel. Paris, Rome. You could finally live the life you deserved, not the one you just settled for.
She had woven the we in so seamlessly. It wasn't her asking for money. It was her offering me a future. A future where I was the hero again, the capable provider who could swoop in and save not just her, but myself. The next 10 days were a whirlwind of secret, intoxicating encounters. A stolen hour in the afternoon while Martha was at work. A late-night glass of wine when Martha was on a closing shift. Brenda would text me, short, thrilling messages that made my heart leap. She was an addiction, and I was in the throes of it, my judgment clouded by a passion I thought had died decades ago. She kept mentioning the investment, always casually, always with a tone of shared excitement. The deadline, she said, was approaching. Finally, on a Friday morning, after a particularly heated encounter in her kitchen, she sealed the deal.
The fund closes on Monday, my love. It's now or never.
That afternoon, I found myself walking into the very bank I used to manage. The familiar smell of carpet cleaner and old money did nothing to calm the frantic beating of my heart. I felt like a criminal returning to the scene of the crime. I walked up to a young teller, a girl I had probably hired a few years before my retirement.
I'd like to make a wire transfer from my retirement account.
My voice sounded strange, distant. I wrote down the account numbers Brenda had given me on a piece of paper. As the teller's fingers clicked away at the keyboard, Martha's tired face flashed in my mind. This was her money too. Her security, the nest egg she was working her fingers to the bone to protect. I was about to set it on fire for a woman I'd known for less than 2 weeks. The amount, sir? I hesitated. My mind screamed at me to stop, to walk away. But then I pictured Brenda's smile, the promise in her eyes. I imagined handing Martha a check for double the amount. Imagined the look of shock and admiration on her face. I would be the hero. I would fix everything.
$50,000.
The words tasted like poison. The teller didn't flinch. She processed the transaction, printed a receipt, and slid it across the counter to me. All set, Mr. Hammond. Have a nice day. I took the slip of paper. It felt as heavy as a tombstone. I walked out of the bank and into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. I had done it. I had betrayed my wife, my past, and my future. And as I stood on the pavement, the warmth of the sun on my face felt like nothing. All I felt was a cold, sinking dread in the pit of my stomach, the terrifying certainty that I had just sealed my own fate. The spider's web wasn't just woven around me anymore. I was hopelessly, irrevocably stuck. The $50,000 left a crater in my life. The days that followed the transfer were thick with a new kind of silence, one filled not with emptiness, but with a humming, high-strung anxiety. I waited for an email, a certificate, some official document about the exclusive fund. Nothing came. When I saw Brenda, the intoxicating thrill was gone, replaced by a nervous flutter in my stomach. Her behavior had shifted, too. The change was subtle, like a barely perceptible drop in temperature. She was still affectionate, but her kisses felt quicker, her embraces more perfunctory. When I tried to ask about the investment, she'd wave a dismissive hand, a gesture that was starting to feel less carefree and more condescending.
Darling, don't be so stuffy. The paperwork is all being processed by the lawyers. You don't get these kinds of returns by doing things the ordinary way.
She would then pull me toward the bedroom, silencing my questions with a passion that now felt manufactured, a tool to manage me rather than a genuine desire. I was a problem to be handled, a box to be checked. The feeling of being her hero had evaporated, leaving behind the cold, clammy suspicion that I was just her fool. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was pacing in my living room, staring at the phone, wondering why Brenda hadn't answered my last text when it rang. The caller ID said, Supermart. Is this Mr. George Hammond?
Yes, this is he.
Sir, it's about your wife, Martha. There's been an accident. She's had a bad fall. The paramedics are taking her to St. Jude's Hospital now. The world tilted on its axis. My breath caught in my throat. Accident. Martha. St. Jude's. The words were disconnected fragments, refusing to form a coherent thought. I dropped the phone and scrambled for my car keys, my mind a blizzard of guilt and fear. As I sped toward the hospital, every red light felt like a personal judgment. I had been stewing in my sordid little drama, obsessing over a con, while my wife, my real life, was in danger. I found her in the emergency room, her face pale and etched with pain. A doctor with tired eyes pulled me aside. "Your wife has a fractured hip, Mr. Hammond. It's a clean break, but given her age, it's very serious. She'll require surgery to insert a pin, and then a long, difficult period of rehabilitation." Fractured hip, surgery. The words hit me like physical blows. The store manager, a kid who looked barely old enough to shave, tried to explain what had happened. "I don't understand it. She slipped in the main aisle, near the pharmacy. We've reviewed the security footage. There was nothing on the floor, no spill, no puddle. But our janitor said when he cleaned the spot, the mop head came up slick, like it was some kind of clear, oily liquid. Like glycerin or mineral oil. We just can't figure out where it came from." That night, I went home to a house that felt cavernous and accusing. The silence was no longer empty, it was filled with Martha's absence. I walked into our bedroom to pack an overnight bag for her, my movements slow and heavy. I opened her dresser to get some comfortable pajamas and a robe. Tucked away beneath a stack of neatly folded sweaters, I saw the corner of a small, leather-bound book. I had never seen it before. A journal. My first instinct was to close the drawer, to respect her privacy. But a stronger, darker curiosity took hold. My hand trembled as I lifted it out. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed I had been betraying for weeks, and I began to read. The first few entries were mundane. Notes about her work schedule, complaints about a rude customer. But then, about 2 weeks ago, the tone changed. October 1st. George has been different lately. Distant, but also, lighter? It's strange. He seems happier, but not with me. He spends more time outside. I think it has something to do with the new woman next door. The redhead in the black convertible. I saw him talking to her. The way he looked at her. I haven't seen him look at me that way in 20 years. My stomach twisted into a knot. She knew. Of course she knew. October 5th. Her name is Brenda. I heard George say it when I was on the porch. She calls herself a consultant. Something about her feels wrong. Too slick. Too polished for Oak Creek. This afternoon, I saw them through the kitchen window. She was laughing, and she touched his arm. George just lit up. He looked like a boy. A foolish, foolish boy. I flipped ahead, my fingers clumsy. The last entry was from 2 days ago. It was longer, the handwriting tight and urgent. October 11th. I couldn't sleep last night. That woman, Brenda. I did something I probably shouldn't have. I used the property records website to look up her name. Brenda Lowell. Then I started searching online. It took hours, but I found something. Not under Brenda Lowell, but I started searching for scams targeting retired men. I found a news article from a TV station in Scottsdale, Arizona, from 3 years ago. It was about a woman they called the Chameleon Widow. Her real name is Catherine Thorne. She preys on lonely, recently retired men with access to their savings. She seduces them, convinces them to invest in a fake, high-yield fund, and then disappears with their money. The MO is identical. Seduction. A story of a recent divorce. An exclusive investment. It's all there. The article had a grainy courthouse photo. She had blonde hair, but it's her. I swear to God, it's her. The same eyes. The same smile. She's not a consultant. She's a predator. And she's living right next door. I dropped the journal as if it were on fire. The room spun. Catherine Thorne. The chameleon widow. My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. The affair, the whispers of a shared future, the investment, it was all a script. A well-rehearsed performance she had given time and time again. And then, the final, horrifying piece clicked into place. Slipped on some kind of clear, oily liquid. Brenda knew where Martha worked. I had told her. She knew Martha's shifts. I had complained about them. The fall wasn't an accident. It was an attack, a cold, calculated move to get my wife out of the way. To injure her, to hospitalize her, to isolate me completely so she could finish the job. Convince me to sell the house, drain the last of our accounts. My affair wasn't just an affair. It was collusion with an enemy who had just tried to cripple my wife. A wave of nausea washed over me, so powerful I had to brace myself on the dresser. The face that stared back at me from the mirror was that of a stranger. A pathetic, gullible old man who had been so blinded by vanity that he had led a viper into his own home. The guilt was gone, burned away by a terror so pure and absolute it felt like it would stop my heart. I stumbled to the window and looked out into the darkness. The lights were on in Brenda's house. She was in there, probably celebrating her victory, counting my $50,000, and waiting for me to come crawling back, a grieving, devoted husband, ready to be fleeced for the rest. I had thought I was her partner. But I was just the next name on her list. I sank to the floor, the journal open beside me. Martha's neat handwriting a testament to the woman I had betrayed. She hadn't been oblivious. She had been investigating, protecting us, while I was chasing a cheap fantasy. The truth was finally, horribly clear. This wasn't about a broken heart. This was about a broken hip. It was about a lifetime of savings. It was about survival. And I realized, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that Catherine Thorne, the woman who called herself Brenda, didn't just want my money. She wanted to erase my entire life. I drove back to the hospital in a daze. Martha's journal sat on the passenger seat, an object of terrible power. Each neatly written word was a testament to the life I had almost thrown away, and the woman I had so profoundly underestimated. The terror of the last hour was beginning to recede, replaced by something else, something I hadn't felt in years. A cold, hard rage. It was a rage directed at the monster next door, but even more so, at the pathetic fool in the driver's seat. I walked into Martha's hospital room and found her awake. She was staring out the window at the darkening sky, looking small and fragile against the starched white pillows. The setting sun cast a golden light on her face, illuminating the lines of pain and worry. The sight of her, so broken and alone, shattered the last of my defenses.
Martha,
I croaked. My voice was a stranger's. She turned her head slowly, her eyes finding mine. They were filled with a weary sadness.
George, you brought my things. Thank you.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend. I walked to her bedside, knelt on the cold linoleum floor, and the entire, sordid story came pouring out of me. It was a raw, ugly confession, a torrent of words fueled by self-loathing and shame. I told her about my loneliness, about Brenda's calculated flattery, about the pathetic thrill I felt being seen by another woman. I told her about the afternoons in that cold, sterile house. And then, the worst part.
The money, Martha. Our money.
My voice broke.
I gave her $50,000 from the retirement account. For a fake investment.
I finally looked up at her face, expecting tears, screaming, a demand for me to get out and never come back. I deserved all of it. But I saw none of it. Her expression didn't change, but a new hardness settled in her eyes, like a placid lake freezing over in an instant. I pushed her journal onto the bed.
It's all in there. Who she is. Her real name is Catherine Thorne. The police call her the Chameleon Widow. And Martha, your fall, it wasn't an accident. The store manager told me you slipped on an oil-like substance. She did this. She did this to you to get you out of the way.
I finished, my confession hanging in the sterile, antiseptic air between us. I was a broken man, kneeling at the feet of the wife I had betrayed in every conceivable way. This was it, the end of my life as I knew it. Martha was silent for a full minute, her gaze fixed on the journal. She didn't cry, she didn't raise her voice. When she finally spoke, her tone was so devoid of emotion it chilled me more than any outburst could have.
$50,000.
It wasn't a question, it was a statement, an epitaph for our savings.
And she put me in this bed. She tried to break more than my hip, George. She tried to break me. To remove me from the equation.
She looked at me then, and the pain in her eyes was a vast, deep ocean. But beneath the pain, a fire was being kindled. A cold, furious fire.
I knew it. I knew there was something predatory about her from the moment she moved in. I trusted you. I thought you were a fool, George, but I never thought you were a traitor.
I'm so sorry, Martha.
Sorry doesn't fix my hip. And it doesn't put the money back in our account. Get me my purse. I need my reading glasses.
Stunned, I did as she asked. She put on her glasses and, with grim determination, began to read the journal entries I had pointed out, her lips a thin, hard line. She read the notes I had missed, her meticulous observations, the details she had collected. When she was done, she closed the book and looked at me, her face a mask of cold fury. I braced myself for the final, killing blow. The demand for a divorce.
All right,
She said, her voice sharp and clear, the voice of the bookkeeper who could spot a single misplaced cent in a $10 million ledger.
The crying is over. We can talk about divorce later. First, we are going to destroy her.
I stared at her, dumbfounded.
What?
You heard me. This isn't just about our money anymore. This is about what she did to me. To us. She thinks we're a couple of weak, pathetic old people she can roll over and discard. She has no idea who she's dealing with.
In that moment, lying in a hospital bed with a fractured hip, Martha was the strongest person I had ever seen. The victim was gone. In her place was a general, and her hospital room had just become a war room.
We can't go to the police yet.
She continued, her mind working with terrifying clarity.
Your affair complicates things. It becomes a he said, she said. A domestic dispute. They won't take it seriously without hard proof.
Proof? What proof?
A confession, you idiot.
She snapped, the first spark of her old irritation flaring.
We need to get her on tape admitting to the scam. Admitting who she is.
A cold dread washed over me.
How? How could we possibly do that?
You are going to go back to her.
The words hung in the air. Go back? To that house? To her? I felt sick.
No, Martha, I can't.
Yes, you can.
She countered, her voice like iron.
You are going to call her. You are going to play the part of the devoted, heartbroken lover, terrified about your wife's health and more dependent on her than ever. You'll tell her you're so distraught you've made a decision. You're going to sell the house, take all our remaining assets, and run away with her. You will offer her everything, George. And her greed will make her careless.
The plan was both brilliant and terrifying. She wanted me to be the bait.
She'll never believe me.
She will.
She said with absolute certainty.
Because her entire scam is built on the belief that men like you are fundamentally weak and predictable. You will prove her right. You owe me this, George. You owe me the chance to watch her world burn.
Her resolve was absolute. It flowed from her to me, a transfusion of courage I so desperately needed. This was my penance, my only path back from the abyss. I nodded slowly.
Okay, what do I do?
First, you call Detective Miller. Frank Miller. You remember him? From the bank? He handles financial fraud. Tell him everything. Tell him we have a plan to get a confession, and we need his help.
I remembered Frank, a sharp, no-nonsense cop. It was a solid first step. The first step on a long, dark road. I stood up, my legs feeling steadier than they had in months. My purpose, which had vanished the day I retired, was suddenly, brutally clear. I was no longer a ghost. I was a soldier, taking orders from the toughest general I knew. I leaned down and kissed Martha's forehead. It was a gesture of allegiance, not of passion. She didn't flinch. She just looked at me, her eyes burning with a cold, righteous fire.
Don't screw this up, George.
I walked out of the hospital, pulled out my phone, and found Frank Miller's number. After a tense, difficult conversation, he agreed to help, his skepticism giving way to interest when I mentioned a possible sting operation. My next call was to Brenda. My thumb hovered over her name, Catherine Thorne. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of the pathetic fool I had been for the past month. Then I sent the text. Brenda, I'm falling apart. Martha's accident, it's bad. I need you. I have to see you. The reply came almost instantly. Of course, my love. I'm here for you. Come over whenever you're ready. The hook was in. The trap was set. And this time, I was not the one being reeled in. The wire was a cold, alien thing taped to my chest. It felt like a guilty heartbeat, a constant reminder of the deception I was about to commit. Detective Miller, a man whose face seemed permanently set in an expression of weary disappointment, gave me my final instructions. Remember, George, you're not a cop. You're a heartbroken man who's about to make a very stupid, very final decision. Let her lead. Let her boast. Her ego is our best weapon. We'll be in a surveillance van parked down the street, listening to every word. The second we have a clear admission to fraud, we're coming in. Don't try to be a hero. You've already tried that, and look where it got you. His words were a punch to the gut, but he was right. I wasn't a hero. I was a fool walking back into the spider's web, only this time, I was carrying the flamethrower. I took a deep breath, the image of Martha in her hospital bed searing itself onto the inside of my eyelids. This was for her. The 50-yard walk from my driveway to her front door was the longest journey of my life. Every rustle of leaves, every distant dog bark, sounded like a gunshot. I rang the bell, and my own pulse throbbed in my ears. The door swung open, and there she was. Catherine Thorne. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater, the picture of soft, empathetic comfort. She pulled me into a hug, and I had to fight the urge to recoil. Her embrace felt like a cage.
Oh, George, my poor darling, you look terrible. Come in, come in.
I let myself be led to the gray sofa, the scene of my first betrayal. She poured 2 glasses of scotch without asking. I played my part, letting my shoulders slump, my hands tremble as I took the glass.
It's bad, Brenda. It's really bad. The doctors, they don't know if she'll ever walk properly again. She's going to need round-the-clock care. A nursing home, maybe.
I let a genuine tear of shame and sorrow, roll down my cheek. Her eyes lit up with a predatory gleam that she quickly masked with a look of deep concern. She moved closer, taking my hand.
Oh, honey, that's awful, but you can't let this destroy you. You have your own life to live.
That's just it,
I said, looking her directly in the eye.
I've made a decision. I can't stay here. This house. It's just a monument to a life that's over. I'm selling it. I spoke to a realtor today.
Her hand tightened on mine. It was the first nibble on the bait.
George, are you sure? That's a big step.
I'm sure,
I said, my voice gaining a desperate strength.
I'm liquidating everything. The stocks, the bonds, whatever's left in the retirement accounts. I want out, and I want to be with you. I want you to take the money, all of it, and invest it for us. Just like you did with the first 50,000. We can go away, anywhere, start over, just you and me.
Her face was a battleground of feigned sympathy and triumphant greed. The greed won. A slow, triumphant smile spread across her lips.
Oh, George, I knew you were a smart man. A man of action. Of course, we can build a beautiful life together.
Now for the hook. I let my face cloud with a flicker of doubt.
It's just, with everything that's happened, I need to feel safe. I need to know that our future is real. The first investment, the 50,000, it's truly secure, isn't it? It's not just some piece of paper.
She laughed, a condescending, musical sound.
George, baby, you have to stop thinking like a small-town bank manager. The fund isn't a piece of paper. The fund is me. It's a network. It's moving money where it can't be touched, where it grows in the dark. It's completely safe because it doesn't officially exist.
My heart hammered against the wire. That's it, I thought. That's the fraud. Miller's voice echoed in my head. Let her ego do the work. I had to push, just a little more. For Martha.
You're just so brilliant, Brenda. The way your mind works. I've never met anyone like you. All those other men. They must have been fools to ever let you go.
Her smile turned sharp, arrogant.
They weren't men, George. They were retirement accounts with legs. Just like you, only you're the biggest prize yet.
And Martha's accident,
I said, letting my voice trail off.
It just feels like fate. It happened at the exact moment we needed it to, pushing me to finally make a decision.
She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. Her breath smelled of scotch and victory.
Baby, after a certain point, you learn you can't wait for fate to give you what you want. Sometimes, you have to go out and make your own luck. A little mineral oil on a slick floor, and a whole new world of opportunity opens up. She's just a loose end that needed tidying.
The world went silent. She had confessed to everything. A loose end. My wife. My Martha. The rage that filled me was so pure, so white-hot, it almost made me leap at her throat. But I didn't have to. At that exact moment, the front door crashed open. It splintered off its hinges, and the room was flooded with armed police officers. Police. Nobody move. Brenda, Catherine, whipped her head around. Her face, a moment ago so full of smug triumph, collapsed into a mask of pure shock, then contorted into a snarl of feral hatred as she saw me. She understood.
You?
She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. Catherine Thorne, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and aggravated assault. As they cuffed her, her eyes locked on mine. The mask was gone. All that was left was the viper.
You pathetic old fool. You'll rot in that house with that crippled old hag. You'll regret this.
They dragged her out, still screaming curses. I stood alone in the center of her perfect, sterile room, my body shaking with the aftershock. The adrenaline drained away, leaving a vast, hollow emptiness. It was over. 6 months later, the house was no longer silent. It was filled with new sounds. The rhythmic squeak of Martha's walker, the low hum of the television playing her favorite game shows, and the sound of my own voice, talking more than I had in years. Catherine Thorne had taken a plea bargain. She was facing at least 20 years in prison. We got most of the money back. But that wasn't the victory. The victory was the small, mundane moments of every day. I had become Martha's caregiver. I cooked her meals, I drove her to physical therapy, I helped her navigate the house that had once been her domain. The roles were reversed, and in that reversal, I found my penance. The trust between us was a fragile, shattered thing we were slowly, painstakingly gluing back together. Some days were silent and tense, the ghost of my betrayal a third person in the room. Other days were better. One evening, I was helping her with her exercises, my hands supporting her as she took a few painful steps. She was leaning heavily on me, her breath labored.
You're getting stronger, Martha.
She stopped, looked down at our hands, and then up at my face. Her eyes were clear.
You made a good pot roast tonight, George.
Thanks, Martha.
It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. It was the promise of a foundation we could rebuild, stone by painful stone. I had chased a fantasy, a cheap thrill, because I felt my life was over. I was a fool who couldn't see the treasure he already had. The price of that foolishness was a fractured hip and a broken heart. But the lesson was priceless. Real love isn't a spark in a stranger's eyes. It's the steady, quiet flame that weathers the storms of a lifetime. It's the hand you hold during the slow, difficult walk back to the light. My story is a cautionary tale, a map of a wrong turn I pray you never have to take. There are so many stories like mine out there, and they all have something to teach us about what's truly valuable in this life. If you'd like to hear more stories that make you think, that make you feel, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. It's the best way to be reminded that the most important stories are often the ones happening right beside us, waiting for us to finally pay attention. Thank you for listening.